There comes a moment in life when you realize that the world does not revolve around you. The faces you pass each day, the strangers you greet, even those you consider closest to you, they are each locked within their own labyrinth of fears, dreams, and struggles. And in that instant of clarity, when it dawns on you that no one is constantly watching, judging, or caring for every step you take, something profound happens. You are freed. This truth is not meant to wound, but to awaken. For as long as you cling to the illusion that others must carry the burden of your significance, you will remain chained by disappointment. But when you finally accept that your existence belongs entirely to you, that your choices, your path, your destiny are yours alone, life begins to simplify. The noise fades. The masks drop. You no longer live to impress, to please, or to beg for validation. What remains is raw, unshakable freedom, the freedom to define yourself, to walk into the unknown without fear of ridicule, to build meaning not from the fragile approval of others, but from the depths of your own being. The illusion that people are constantly watching us, evaluating us, and caring deeply about the choices we make is one of the greatest psychological traps we fall into. From early childhood, we are conditioned to seek approval. Parents clapping at our first steps, teachers rewarding good behavior, peers validating us through friendship and acceptance. Over time, this creates a hidden expectation that the eyes of the world are fixed upon us, weighing every decision, every success, and every mistake. We walk through life carrying an invisible audience, and this belief shapes the way we speak, act, and even dream. But in truth, most people are too preoccupied with the dramas of their own existence to give more than a fleeting thought to ours. The pressure we feel is, more often than not, a projection of our own insecurities rather than a reality imposed upon us. When you believe everyone cares about what you do, you live in a constant state of performance. Each word feels rehearsed, each step measured, as though the world is a stage and you must deliver a flawless act. The weight of that performance is exhausting because it is endless. You begin to suppress your authentic self, bending and reshaping who you are to fit imagined judgments. You become hyper-aware of your failures, magnifying them into spectacles you assume others must be whispering about. This way of living is not only tiring, it is destructive, for it slowly erodes your sense of individuality and leaves you bound by an illusion that others hold the pen to your story. But when you strip away that illusion and see reality for what it is, clarity begins to emerge. The stranger on the street does not linger on your mistakes. The colleague you fear is analyzing your work, is busy fighting their own battles. Even the people closest to you, while they may care in moments of intimacy, are not orbiting around your every action. They too are caught in the gravity of their own worries, ambitions, and inner conflicts. This realization may sting at first because it reveals the solitude of existence, but hidden within that solitude is a profound liberation. If no one is truly watching, then the chains of imagined judgment fall away. Consider how much of human anxiety stems from the anticipation of others' reactions. We hesitate to take risks, to voice ideas, to pursue dreams because we assume the crowd will laugh, criticize, or turn away. Yet in most cases, the crowd is not paying attention at all. The laughter we fear never arrives because the stage we imagine does not exist. The eyes we picture staring at us are looking elsewhere, into the mirrors of their own struggles. By clinging to the illusion, we waste years of energy constructing masks to impress an audience that isn't even seated. The day we understand this truth, life grows simpler, because the burden of performance dissolves and what remains is the raw space to live authentically, without apology or disguise. Freedom begins when validation loses its power. As long as your sense of worth is tied to the approval of others, you are a captive of their opinions. A compliment lifts you, but a criticism shatters you. Your emotions rise and fall like waves controlled by external winds, never truly stable, never truly your own. The need for validation keeps you in a cycle of seeking, performing, and pleasing, where every action is measured not by its alignment with your inner truth, but by how well it satisfies the expectations of others. It is an exhausting way to live, because no matter how much recognition you gain, it is never enough. The hunger for approval is insatiable, and it enslaves you to the shifting moods and standards of those around you. True freedom begins the moment you realize that external validation adds nothing to your essence. Praise may feel good, but it does not define your value. Criticism may sting, but it does not diminish your being. You exist independent of both. This understanding releases you from the invisible leash that keeps you chasing approval like a shadow that forever slips out of reach. without the need to be validated. You can act from conviction instead of fear, from authenticity instead of performance. Your decisions become rooted in what you believe is right, not in what will earn applause or avoid disapproval. This shift is not about rejecting others completely or living in isolation. It is about reclaiming authority over your inner world. Validation may still come, but it no longer governs you. It becomes background noise instead of a controlling force. Imagine walking into a room without the constant inner question, do they like me? Do they accept me? Do they see me as enough? Instead, your focus rests on the present, on expressing yourself without the burden of needing to be approved. That is where freedom lies, in the release from dependence on something that was never secure to begin with. When validation loses its power, you find that the world softens. The fear of rejection fades because you no longer measure yourself against the fickle judgments of others. The endless comparisons that once poisoned your peace dissolve, because you no longer need to rank yourself on an invisible scale. Life simplifies into a direct relationship between you and your choices, between your values and your actions. You start to live not as a reflection of external opinion, but as a true embodiment of who you are within. That is the beginning of unshakable freedom. Self-responsibility is the gateway to strength. The moment you accept that your life, your actions, and your outcomes belong solely to you, something powerful begins to unfold within. As long as you hold others accountable for your failures, your lack of progress, or your unhappiness, you hand away your power. You convince yourself that life is happening to you, that circumstances or people determine your destiny, and in doing so, you remain stuck. Responsibility feels heavy at first because it strips away excuses. It forces you to confront the truth that no one else is coming to rescue you. No one else will build your future. No one else can fight your battles. But within that heaviness lies the seed of liberation. Once you stop waiting for someone else to change your life, you discover that you already carry everything you need to begin changing it yourself. Taking responsibility is not about blaming yourself for everything that has gone wrong. It is about owning your response to life. You cannot control the family you were born into, the hardships you have faced, or the pain you have endured. But you can control how you interpret those events, what lessons you take from them, and how you choose to act moving forward. Responsibility transforms suffering into wisdom because instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What can I do with this?" That subtle shift moves you from being a victim of circumstances to becoming an architect of your own reality. Strength is born from this choice. Every time you assume responsibility, you grow. You stop waiting for external forces to grant you permission to act, and you start giving yourself permission. You stop wasting energy resenting what you cannot change, and you redirect that energy toward building what you can. Responsibility empowers you to set boundaries, to pursue goals relentlessly, to refuse to accept less than what aligns with your values. It grounds you in discipline, because discipline is nothing more than the daily practice of taking responsibility for your future. When you embrace responsibility, excuses lose their appeal. You no longer look for someone else to blame when things go wrong, because blame does not solve problems. Action does. And with every action you take, you reinforce the truth that your life is not in the hands of others. It is in your own. This realization makes you resilient. Obstacles no longer paralyze you, they become challenges to solve. Failures no longer define you, they become teachers. Responsibility becomes the lens through which you see life, and through that lens, strength is no longer something you wish for, it is something you embody. Indifference of others is not rejection, but liberation. At first, when you recognize that most people are not deeply concerned with your struggles, your dreams, or even your failures, it can feel cold and isolating. We crave to be seen, to be understood, to be held in constant regard. But when that craving collides with the truth that people are largely absorbed in their own worlds, it can either break you or free you. If you choose to see indifference as rejection, you carry resentment, bitterness, and self-pity. But if you see it as liberation, suddenly you are released from an invisible burden. You are no longer required to shape yourself into someone else's expectation. You no longer need to perform for an audience that isn't watching. The indifference of others gives you space to move without judgment. It means your mistakes are not magnified under a spotlight, and your decisions are not endlessly analyzed by a crowd. The world may not care about your failures, but it also does not obsess over them, which means you are free to try again, free to experiment, free to stumble without the weight of imagined ridicule. This freedom is a gift disguised as neglect. When others are indifferent, you can finally live authentically, because no one is invested enough in your choices to control them. Instead of asking, "Why don't they care?" you begin asking, "What can I do with this freedom?" The absence of external concern is not emptiness, it is open space. It is the silence in which your true voice can emerge, unshaped by constant approval or disapproval. It is in that silence that you begin to hear your own desires more clearly. The lack of constant validation becomes the soil in which your independence grows strong roots. Indifference also teaches you resilience. When no one rushes to pick you up, you learn to stand on your own legs. When no one celebrates your victories, you learn to celebrate yourself. When no one shields you from failure, you learn that failure does not destroy you. This is not rejection. It is a harsh but necessary training ground. The world's indifference strips away illusions and hands you back the raw responsibility of living, unguarded, unassisted, but also unbound. It is in that rawness where you find your strength, because you are no longer living to be accepted, but to be true. Simplicity emerges when comparison disappears. Much of the complexity and heaviness of life is not born from what we actually experience, but from the endless measuring of ourselves against others. From the time we are young, we are taught to look sideways, to see who runs faster, who scores higher, who looks better, who has more. This habit of comparison weaves itself into our daily lives until it becomes second nature, a constant background noise that distorts how we see ourselves. Instead of asking, "Am I moving forward?" we ask, "Am I ahead of them?" Instead of asking, "Am I happy?" we ask, "Do I look happier than they do?" Comparison creates a maze with no exit, because no matter where you stand, there will always be someone ahead in some way, and someone behind in another.
When you live trapped in this cycle, life feels endlessly complicated. Every decision carries the weight of being judged not on its own merit, but against an invisible standard set by others. You buy things not because you need them, but because someone else has them. You pursue goals not because they matter to you, but because they make you appear equal or superior. This constant race is exhausting because it is never truly won. There will always be someone with more, and so the cycle continues, endlessly fueling dissatisfaction. But the moment you step out of comparison, a profound simplicity takes hold. Suddenly, your life becomes your own. You no longer need to twist yourself into shapes to compete with someone else's story. You no longer need to constantly check where you stand, because the only direction that matters is forward. Without comparison, you measure yourself against who you were yesterday, and that is a scale that brings both clarity and peace. Progress becomes personal, victories become meaningful, and failures become lessons rather than humiliations. Simplicity is not about having less, it is about carrying less mental weight. When you stop comparing, you stop dragging the invisible burdens of envy, insecurity, and pride. What is left is focus, the ability to see what truly matters to you, what brings you fulfillment, what aligns with your values. Your choices become lighter because they are no longer clouded by the pressure of outshining someone else. You no longer need to impress, you only need to express. In this way, the disappearance of comparison clears the path for a life that is direct, honest, and free of unnecessary complication. True meaning is built from within, not borrowed. For much of life, people search for meaning outside themselves, in relationships, in recognition, in possessions, in the approval of society. They chase the symbols of significance, believing that if they can collect enough of them, life will finally feel whole. Yet, every time one symbol is grasped, the fulfillment fades, and the search begins again. This endless pursuit leaves people restless, always looking outward, rarely turning inward to the place where meaning is truly born. Meaning does not arrive as a gift from the outside world. It is created in the quiet decisions you make, the values you choose to uphold, and the purpose you cultivate in your own heart. It comes from aligning your actions with what you know to be true, even when no one is watching. It comes from creating rather than consuming, from contributing rather than competing, from living in harmony with your deeper self rather than chasing validation from others. When you understand this, the noise of the world loses its grip, because you realize that no one else can define your significance. Borrowed meaning is fragile. If it comes from a title, it disappears when the title is gone. If it comes from a relationship, it crumbles when that relationship ends. If it comes from material wealth, it is shaken the moment circumstances change. But meaning built from within endures, because it is rooted in something no one can take away. Your character, your vision, your commitment to growth, your ability to turn suffering into strength. It is an anchor that holds you steady when the storms of life arrive, because its foundation is not external approval, but inner truth. When you stop trying to borrow meaning, you begin to see the world differently. You no longer ask, "What can they give me to feel important?" Instead, you ask, "What can I give to live with importance?" You no longer measure your worth by the symbols you display, but by the integrity of your choices and the depth of your contribution. This shift does not just simplify life, it dignifies it. It transforms every small act into a thread of significance, weaving together a life that is not dependent on applause or recognition, but alive with authenticity. When no one cares, you are finally free to care for yourself. For so long, many people live with the burden of seeking attention, approval, or recognition from others, as if their worth depends on being noticed. They exhaust themselves trying to fit into molds that were never designed for them, bending and reshaping their lives to meet expectations that were never truly their own. But when the realization dawns that no one is endlessly invested in your every move, you are released from that prison. The silence left behind by the absence of external care can at first feel like abandonment, but hidden within it is an invitation to turn inward and give yourself the care, love, and attention you once demanded from the world. Caring for yourself is not selfish, it is essential. It is the act of recognizing that you are the constant in your own life, the one presence that will never leave you. When others are indifferent, you learn to become attentive to your own needs. You learn to nourish your body, guard your mind, and honor your spirit, not because someone else insists on it, but because you finally see your own value clearly. This is where self-respect begins. In the quiet moments when you choose to prioritize your growth, your peace, and your well-being without waiting for permission or acknowledgement, the absence of external concern becomes fertile ground for self-discovery. With no one watching closely, you are free to ask yourself the questions that truly matter. Who am I when no one is looking? What do I want when no one is guiding me? How can I live in a way that feels real to me? The answers to these questions are not given, they are created, and they become the foundation of a life lived with authenticity. When no one else carries the responsibility of caring for your path, you become stronger. You stop waiting for rescue and you start building your own way forward. You stop expecting others to fill your emptiness, and you begin filling it with purpose, with creation, with growth. This shift transforms loneliness into solitude, dependence into independence, and uncertainty into strength. The indifference of others no longer wounds you. It sharpens you, teaching you to rise, to nurture, and to stand as the caretaker of your own destiny.